But first, Jesse Marsch is expected to be named as the new Leeds manager today. He'll replace Marcelo Bielsa, who was sacked yesterday morning after 3 years in charge. Marsch's last job ended in him being sacked by RB Leipzig in December after only 5 months in charge. I tell you what, let's get more on this story. Delighted to say that we're joined now by the former Leeds goalkeeper, Paul Robinson, who joins us. Very good morning to you, Paul. Thanks for joining us. Right, it feels like this wasn't an easy decision for Leeds to make, and I've seen the quotes coming out from the club. Ultimately, though, was it the right one?
Morning, Rob. Nice to speak to you. I think it was taken with a heavy heart, obviously. I think the man's got such respect and he's done so much for that club. It won't have been a decision that was very easy to make. I think when you look at it, it was probably a business decision. You look at the way the team was playing, you look at the amount of goals that it was conceding. It wasn't the games they were losing, it was the manner in which they were losing the games. You know, they weren't in games and they were conceding far too many goals. The organisation looked to have gone, the team looked to be in a little bit of disarray. But like I said, it will be a decision that was made with a heavy, heavy heart. It's not very often that you see a manager get sacked from a club and thousands of fans swarm outside the stadium saying the manager shouldn't be sacked, or go to the training ground yesterday and to see the manager off. He's held in such high regard for what he's done for this club. I mean, he took a club that was 14th in the Championship within 3 years to 9th in the Premier League, playing some of the most attractive football that we've seen. And I think you've got to put it down to a business decision, and a decision where the owners, the board, have decided they want to stay in the Premier League, and that is absolutely vital to this club's future.
From you is the legacy that he will have there is of the man who took them from sort of being on their knees in the Championship to the Premier League, rather than the man who just kept going with an idea, a formula, a tactic that wasn't working.
He'll always be remembered fondly. He's up there with the greatest Leeds United managers of recent history, long-term history as well. And it's just a shame that it's ended this way, that it's not been able to be a proper goodbye, if you like, a nice sending off for him. This stage of the season, where they are relegation threatened, it's difficult. I would have loved to have seen him kept the team up this year and parted ways in the summer and said the club's moving on in a different direction. He'll always be remembered fondly. There's a lot of fans that are even now saying, you know, they would rather go down with Bielsa playing the style of football that he does, and the way that he plays, and watch the team play in the way that they do. But the actual business side of it and the reality of it is that the results weren't good enough, and they weren't getting the results on the pitch. And it was the performances, Rob. But you'll always remembered very, very fondly. And like I say, you know, there's people who still now don't want to see the man leave simply because of what he's done for the club.
It's amazing. Almost a unique position, isn't it? We'll get into the specifics of who that may be in a moment, but in general then, from what I'm hearing from you, how hard will it be for the new man coming in to replace Bielsa, knowing that he had such a good relationship with the fans?
They're huge boots to fill. Huge boots to fill. A manager gets a job when a club isn't doing well. Very, very rarely does a manager take over a job at a football club when the club's in a good position and they're on a run of good results. That doesn't generally happen. And whoever comes in now, we're hearing it's going to be Jesse Marsch, and if that's him, he's got huge shoes to fill. Bielsa's got such a legacy there, and he's held in such high regard. Like I say, even now he's held in such high regard. But it's not just the fact that the manager's held in such high regard. It's his methods, it's his methodology, it's the way he is with the players, what he gets from these players, the way he's changed the training ground, the amount of backroom staff that he's got. You know, he's given a salary every year and he appoints his backroom staff. There's going to be a huge change. The amount of personnel that the new manager's going to have to bring with them. He's going to walk into the training ground and he's going to see, you know, the bedrooms what the manager's put in, the apartment that the manager's put in, the running track around the training ground that he's put in, and it's not a usual training ground. So it's going to be a huge change. Whether that change was now, whether it was the end of the season, whether it was next season, whoever came in after Marcelo Bielsa, not just because of his legacy, because of his methods, because of what he asks of the players, the way that they play, the system that they play, the pressing that they play. He's taken a Championship squad to 9th in the Premier League because of his relationship with the players, because of what he gets out of them. It's going to be a big ask for somebody else to come in and get the same out of the players.
Well, you mentioned Jesse Marsch there. That's the name we are expecting. How much does he seem like a good fit?
I think it's a big call up. I think it's a really big chance that Leeds have taken. I think, you know, his success in America and Austria, and then they got the job at Leipzig and didn't last very long. He oversaw a 6-3 defeat against Manchester City in the Champions League. His tenure there didn't last very long. But you look at his record and you say it's quite narrow-minded to say that, you know, somebody without experience in the Premier League is not the ideal man for the job. And I think in modern day football, managers and coaches know world football, or, you know, inside out. I think it's going to be very, very difficult to come into the toughest league in the world, in the toughest situation in the world, to try and avoid relegation. You know, if you're in the Premier League, it's hard enough. But to come in with 10, 12 games left to try and get a club safe and avoid relegation, it's going to be a massive ask for him. Yes, he's never managed in this country, but I don't think that will be a problem because of his ability that he's got. His CV doesn't stack up like Marcelo Bielsa's, but you have to trust people in charge. You know, you look at when Marcelo Bielsa was appointed, not many people knew much about him. Pundits like myself, like others, we had to do our research on him, see where he's come from, what his background was. And then you hear the likes of Pep Guardiola, Pochettino talking about him, what high regard he was in. He's built his name in this country. Jesse Marsch's CV is nowhere near Bielsa's CV when he came in. It's a real big chance that the Leeds board are going to take if that is the man that they're appointing.
Yeah, and we know the situation Leeds are in right now. So what's the first thing in his inbox? What does he need to tackle first?
The organisation and the togetherness of the side. They just looked in disarray in recent games. Like I said to you at the beginning of the interview today, Rob, I said it's not the fact that they're losing games, it's the way in which they were losing games. They're not creating enough chances, they're not taking the chances, but at the back defensively, just simple things, organisation. But they have had the spine of the team ripped out of them the whole season. You know, they've missed Liam Cooper, Calvin Phillips, Patrick Bamford, to name just three. Luke Ayling's been out for a long, long time. And under any regime, regardless of who the manager is, when you have key players who start week in and week out for you, it's going to be a big ask. But then you look at January, was recruitment right? There was no recruitment in January. And when you're missing such big players for so long of the season, you question why they didn't go into the transfer market in January and strengthen this side. Whether that was because the finances weren't there, whether that's because the manager didn't want them, we won't know that. But the new manager has to get this team organised. They have to stop shipping goals. It's easy to say, keep clean sheets and you don't lose football matches, but they're in a real relegation scrap now. You know, a few weeks ago you looked at the table and you thought, you know, that they're going to be okay. They've got quality players, they've got players coming back, but now all of a sudden they've played more games than anybody else down there. They've not got Patrick Bamford, they've not got a return date. Calvin Phillips, there's no return date. Liam Cooper, we don't know when he's going to be coming back. And all of a sudden, it's a different pressure. So the manager's got to get some results and he's got to get them quickly. They've got Leicester away, then they've got Villa at home and Norwich at home. The next 3 games for Leeds United could be season defining.
Yeah, they're only 2 points above the relegation zone. A goal difference of -31. Only Norwich have a worse one in the Premier League. Can he keep Leeds up?
It's a big question, a very, very big question, and I think it's how he takes to the job. Me personally, looking at the appointment, it's not one that fills me with excitement. It's not one that, you know, fills me full of confidence that Leeds are going to stay in the Premier League. But like I said, when Marcelo Bielsa came in, we didn't know much about this manager. You have to put the trust in the board, you have to put the trust in the owners that they've done their due diligence, they've done their recruitment policy, and they know what they're getting with this coach. And they're obviously confident in the fact that he's the man to do that. From the outside looking in, his CV doesn't stack up to a top Premier League manager, and he's coming into a really, really tough league in a relegation fight. He's got it all on to do to keep Leeds United up. With this change in the play, the style of play, like I say, would it have been better to keep Bielsa and know what you're getting and what he's done has worked in the Premier League? Do you stick with that and ride out the storm, or do you sack him and move on? They've chose to sack him and move on. They've rolled the dice.
Okay, well, we've got you here. We've got to ask you about the EFL Cup final yesterday. That decision to change the goalkeeper before the shootout. Now, we know it was pre-planned, but if you're Edouard Mendy and you've had a game like he's had, how unhappy would you be with that?
I think I'd be doing what Kepa did 3 years ago and pretending that I couldn't hear the manager and wasn't coming off. It's funny how the boot's on the other foot. He was very pleased to come on yesterday, Kepa. But from a goalkeeper's point of view and a manager's point of view, it's difficult for the goalkeeper who's playing. You're the number one goalkeeper there, as Mendy is. He's had a fantastic game. I think there's an argument that the goalkeeper's playing that well. When you're full of adrenaline, you're in the moment, you're playing well, you're feeling unbeatable. Why take him out of that situation? Leave him in that situation. He's playing that well, he's making saves. He's going to go into a penalty shootout full of confidence because he's playing well. You bring in a goalkeeper off the bench who's cold with expectation. You know, with Mendy on the field, there's no expectation of him saving penalties. But the way that he's playing, I wouldn't have changed him, no. And I think it was just, you know, the boot was on the other foot with Kepa, wasn't it?
Yeah. Psychologically, then, it was a huge lift for Liverpool, was it?
I think so, and I think, you know, you look at the stature of the two goalkeepers. You know, Kepa is nowhere near as big as Mendy is, and he doesn't fill the goal, and he's not as imposing. Yes, he's a penalty expert, and you know, you can see the reasons that Tuchel's done it, because he's done it previously and it's worked for him. It was one decision that, you know, spectacularly failed. He didn't get near one penalty and he missed the winning penalty. So the decision couldn't have gone any worse. But in hindsight, if it had saved 2 penalties, and you know, we'd have been having a different conversation. The manager has done it previously in the past and it's worked. So you can't question his decision. But the decision making on the day when Mendy was playing so well, I'd have left him on the field.
Yeah, and a quick word on Caoimhin Kelleher as well. He was the hero in the end. Just how good is he? How impressed have you been with him?
Best number 2 in the world, as the manager said. I'm not so sure I'd want that tag. He's only played a handful of games for Liverpool, but he's won 3 penalty shootouts and he's proven to be an outstanding young talent. It'll be interesting to see how long he's happy to be the best number 2 in the world, because when you're behind a goalkeeper like Adrian, you know that your game time is going to be limited. You're not going to get that much time on the field, but with Liverpool competing on all fronts and in many competitions, he will get a certain amount of game time. But there's going to become a time where he wants to be that number 1, and he's certainly good enough. He's proven that now. I mean, his confidence and his mindset for somebody so young to play in such big games, you know that Jurgen Klopp's got faith in him because he picked him for the final. He's going to be an outstanding goalkeeper.
Okay. And you are outstanding as well, Paul. Lovely to speak to you as always. Thank you very much indeed.